Welcome to The Lead. I'm Phil Mattingly in for Jake Tapper, and let's get straight to the breaking news in our Law and Justice lead. Just a short while ago, the Justice Department released a transcript and audio of its recent interview with convicted sex trafficker and Jeffrey Epstein's associate, Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, this is from a two-day, hours-long interview Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche conducted with Maxwell last month. In the transcript, Maxwell talked about President Trump's friendship with Epstein, Epstein's suicide, the millions of dollars found in her accounts. Maxwell also denied ever recruiting a woman from Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate and criticized the testimony from an underage victim who testified against her. This and much, much more. Combing further through these transcripts for us is CNN crime and justice correspondent Caitlin Pullins. Caitlin, let's start with what Maxwell said about President Trump's friendship with Jeffrey Epstein.
Phil, she's asked about Donald Trump several times in this interview with Todd Blanche that took place 1 month ago. And Ghislaine Maxwell says that she absolutely never in any context saw or heard of anything inappropriate done by Donald Trump. Here's a little bit more from the audio recording of that interview.
I think they were friendly, like people are in social settings. I don't think they were close friends, or I certainly never witnessed the president in any of, I don't recall ever seeing him in his house, for instance. I actually never saw the president in any type of massage setting. I never witnessed the president in any inappropriate setting in any way. The president was never inappropriate with anybody. In the times that I was with him, he was a gentleman in all respects.
Now recall, this is an extraordinary interview, Phil, in that Ghislaine Maxwell, a convicted defendant of sex trafficking of minors, is speaking to the Deputy Attorney General, number 2 in the Justice Department. Very unusual at a time where she's still appealing her sentence. This moment where she's talking to Todd Blanche, it is under an immunity agreement where she is not allowed to lie, or else the Justice Department could theoretically choose to use her statements in court. She also is telling Blanche that she admires Trump very much, is very complimentary. She says, "I admire his extraordinary achievement in becoming the president now." The Justice Department, even though they are offering her immunity in this situation, Blanche is very clear to her he's making her no promises and not giving her any benefits necessarily, although Ghislaine Maxwell was transferred from a low-security prison where there would be violent offenders around her to a prison camp in Texas shortly after this interview took place, a camp, the minimal security that the prison system offers.
Yeah, still a lot of questions about that, I do want to say up front. I also want to ask, though, Maxwell weighed in on Epstein's death by suicide, ruled by suicide, reiterated that it was a suicide by Trump administration officials as well. What did she say?
Phil, she's got speculation there. She says pretty clearly she does not believe the position of the Justice Department, the federal government, that Epstein hanged himself in jail in 2019 when he was in federal custody. Here is more of the audio clip of that.
I do not believe he died by suicide, no.
And do you believe that, do you have any speculation or view of who killed him?
No, I don't.
So potential there, Phil, that could fuel some conspiracy theories, although a reminder that Attorney General Bill Barr, who was the Attorney General at that time in 2019 when both Epstein and Maxwell were being charged or investigated, and Epstein did kill himself. Barr says that there was no foul play. He did not believe there was foul play, and that he did believe that Epstein hanged himself. That just happened on Monday when Barr was speaking to the House Oversight Committee in a deposition. Some other things that Ghislaine Maxwell said in this interview that are important to note. She also said there's no client list. That was another area of conspiracy theory for some time now. Was there a client list the Justice Department was not releasing of Jeffrey Epstein? There has been a contact book that came out during Ghislaine Maxwell's trial of people he knew, but no client list, unequivocally, Ghislaine Maxwell says to Todd Blanche last month.
I believe it's 337 pages, hours of recording. Caitlin, I know you and the team have already been doing tremendous work. Anything else you find, please let us know. Caitlin Pullins, thanks so much. Well, joining us now, former state and federal prosecutor Ellie Honig. Ellie, I want to start kind of your Based on your experience, your read of the transcript, at least up to this point, is this a credible interview?
Oh my gosh, no, Phil. I mean, I'm most of the way through the transcript now. I've been relying on Caitlin's reporting, but in this transcript, Ghislaine Maxwell provides a simply bizarre worldview wherein almost nobody did anything wrong. She doesn't even actually implicate Jeffrey Epstein. When she's asked about the crimes that Jeffrey Epstein's been convicted of, or excuse me, charged with, he died before he could go to trial, she basically says, I don't have any knowledge of this. I suspect maybe he did some of it, but nothing that I know about. Ghislaine Maxwell herself maintains that she is absolutely 100% innocent, and she also essentially implicates nobody else in any type of criminal conduct. So if one believes that worldview, fine, then maybe Ghislaine Maxwell is credible. I certainly do not. I find it impossible to believe her account of things.
One of the things that's striking in the account, much of the transcript shows Maxwell struggling to remember parts of her decades-long relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Listen to this.
And then I believe, I don't remember, I think I got a phone call actually. I wasn't in Palm Beach. I think I got a phone call that there was a police at his house or something.
There was also a lot of praise for President Trump in this transcript. Did anything in that sense surprise you of what you've seen?
Well, in contrast to the clip you just played, there also are several sections of the transcript where Ghislaine Maxwell goes on for pages and pages about romantic relationships between members of high society and financiers and details that are pretty much irrelevant, that nobody cares about, that have nothing to do with the actual trafficking of children. So, yeah, there are times when she seems to go blank, and there are times when she seems to have a lot of recall about things that really don't matter.
It's a Friday afternoon in August, which I think has something to do with the timing of the release here. But what does the release, the decision to release this, tell you about what DOJ may do next here?
So it tells me they're going to do nothing next with respect to actually making criminal cases. And Phil, I said from the start, the fact that DOJ is even considering releasing this transcript, which they now have done, that in itself is a tell, because if you were planning to ever make new criminal cases based on Ghislaine Maxwell's information, releasing her transcript like they've just done is the last thing you would ever do. It would tip off your potential targets. It would tip off your investigative methods. And beyond that, Phil, as I just said, I'm actually surprised to see she doesn't even implicate anybody. I mean, even if a juror was to take everything in this transcript as true, there would be nobody else to charge or convict with anything. Yet another reason why I'm just not buying this.
Is there a chance that Maxwell could get a reduced sentence because of this?
There's a couple chances. So first of all, she still has an appeal pending. She's trying to get the U.S. Supreme Court to take her case. It's unlikely, but it's possible. She also could receive what's called a Rule 35 letter from the Justice Department. That's when a prosecutor goes to her judge after sentencing, where we are now, and says, I'd like you to reduce her sentence. That's up to DOJ, whether they want to make that motion. But finally, she could get a pardon or a commutation. As Caitlin Polan said, she's absolutely playing for that. She goes out of her way to praise Donald Trump, talk about what a gentleman and a wonderful person he is. I think we can see why.
Ellie Honig, invaluable resources always, my friend. Thanks so much.
Phil.
I want to bring in James Marsh. He's an attorney who represented several Epstein victims. One of them is Maria Farmer, who says both Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell assaulted her 30 years ago. James, I want to start with, you told us last time you were here that your victims want transparency. They want accountability. Do you think this goes in any direction toward accomplishing that?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, certainly we are, happy that they've released this. Obviously, not releasing it just feeds the rumor and speculation that has been around Jeffrey Epstein for decades. And so it's a good thing that it's been released, along with the audio tape. But I've been trying to lower expectations about this transcript and the so-called DOJ records for weeks now, because what we've seen historically over decades is pretty much similar to what we're seeing in the Maxwell transcript, which is she has a really good recall of his finances, the deals that he was involved in, intricate details of the people that he knew. But when it comes to the controversial things about this case, the underage sex trafficking, the possible links to intelligence, how Jeffrey Epstein got all of his money, power, and influence, she's a little bit more vague and very studied in her responses. And that is not a surprise given the position that she's in. she's sort of damned if she does and damned if she doesn't. If she tells the full truth, everything she absolutely knows about Jeffrey Epstein, the public is not going to view her in good light. And certainly she's got these cases on appeal. She's trying to get a commutation, I'm sure. She's trying to get a reduction in her sentence or an outright pardon. So this was probably about the best we could get for her under those circumstances.
You know, one of the names that people have raised a lot in terms of wanting more information, you being an individual who has raised this issue, is Alex Acosta, the U.S. attorney in Miami that negotiated the secret sweetheart deal with Epstein back in 2008. That agreement allowed Epstein to avoid federal charges. I want to play a part of the interview where Maxwell references Maria Villafana, who was the lead prosecutor in the Epstein case and was pursuing an indictment. Brad Edwards is an attorney who also represented Epstein victims. And CVRA, which you're going to hear in this clip, stands for the Crime Victim Rights Act. Take a listen.
The reason why I know that she went behind Acosta's back and everything else to do this is because Brad Edwards, in a podcast, made the revelation. What he says is that he'd never heard of the CVRA case before, and Villafana called him and told him to file it. The sole purpose of the CVRA was to overturn the non-prosecution agreement.
Can you explain what Maxwell is referencing here?
So the Crime Victims' Rights Act gives victims of federal crimes, especially crimes such as these, the right to notification. Notification of the crimes, a right to participate in the proceedings and have their voice heard. So there was quite a bit of litigation around this issue, spearheaded by my friend and colleague, Paul Cassell, who's a victim rights advocate, on whether or not the victims received the proper notice before the FBI and the Justice Department agreed to the non-prosecution agreement. So this is what she's referring to. And it became quite a big issue that the victims were not given notification in advance. They were not given their rights. And it resulted in almost a decade of litigation around that issue.
There are still a lot of questions about Alex Acosta in general. We'll see what comes of that in the weeks and months ahead. James Marsh, always appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me on and your coverage.
Well, our teams are continuing to go through the transcripts, the audio of this interview between Ghislaine Maxwell and Deputy Attorney Todd Blanche. We have much more ahead. But first, with suicide behind such a sensitive issue in this story, we do want to mention the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Call or text 988. It's open 24/7 with counselors standing by if you or someone you know needs help saving a life.